What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a new problem with iOS 18.5, some last-minute WWDC and iOS 26 leaks, bad news for the iPhone 17 and 17 Air, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And if you want to continue the conversation beyond the comment section on these videos, be sure to check out the Apple Den Discord server linked below. Okay, so this is the final Apple Weekly before we get iOS 26. I cannot believe it. We are just 3 days away. So before we talk about the last minute WWDC and iOS 26 leaks, we first have to talk about what happened this week and also the new problem, the new bug with iOS 18.5. I don't think a lot of people are caring about that much right now, but I do still want to touch on that. So this week was another week without a software update. It's been a few weeks now since we've gotten a software update, but of course all that will end in a grand fashion next week when we see all the new updates for Apple at WWDC. And I just want to remind you guys that I will be going live here on my YouTube channel for WWDC 2025. It's always one of the best streams of the year, if not the best stream of the year, aside from the iPhone event. So we react live in real time with thousands of other people. So if you're interested in that, I will leave a link down below. It's already scheduled, so make sure you tune in. You know, a lot of people like having the stream on at the same time as WWDC, or, you know, they come in before and after the event. So whatever you want to do, it's there for you. I will be in there reacting to all of the updates across the board. Again, that's linked down below, or this is a good time to get subscribed if you're not subscribed already. Anyways, this week we saw a lot of people complaining about a bug in iOS 18.5. So of course that is still the latest public software updates right now. And apparently a lot of users are having issues with the Mail application showing a blank screen. So they can't see any emails in their inbox whatsoever. And also the app is apparently freezing up until you reboot the device. So this has been posted over on the Mac Rumors forums. This is posted on Apple support forums and on Reddit. So this does seem to be a growing issue with users on iOS 18.5. I've not had this issue myself. I've tested this. I've tried to recreate this bug several times. I've not been able to, but if you have had a bug with the Mail application, let me know in a comment down below. Hopefully we do see an iOS 18.5.1 to address that issue, along with some other bug fixes and security patches. So I would not be surprised to see an 18.5.1 at some point within the next week or so. So we may be seeing that next week, since Apple's going to break the cycle of no software updates. So if you're waiting on an 18.5.1, we might be getting that pretty soon to address these issues. And I say these issues because last week we also talked about an issue with iOS 18.5 related to MagSafe charging, where devices, iPhone 16s specifically, would not charge via MagSafe. You'd have to kind of take it off and re-put it on to fix that bug. So that's another thing that could be addressed in 18.5.1. Now, as far as iOS 18.6 beta, I know a lot of you guys have been asking me about that as well. Well, that's actually been delayed, and this is due to the ongoing issues with China and the United States. So this came from a report in the Financial Times where they said Apple's rollout of artificial intelligence services in China with Alibaba is being held up by a Beijing regulator as the tech partnership becomes the latest casualty of Donald Trump's trade war. Multiple AI products that were co-developed by the tech companies have been submitted to China's Internet Authority for approval, but their applications are stalled at the Cyberspace Administration of China, the CAC. And the reason I'm bringing this up with iOS 18.6 is because that was going to be the big feature in iOS 18.6, was bringing Apple Intelligence support to China. Of course, that's not the only thing, but that was going to be one of the main features in such a small update. So that could be a reason that Apple kind of just delayed iOS 18.6 for the time being. So we'll have to wait and see. Maybe it won't even be in iOS 18 at all if this continues to be stalled out. And as far as iOS 18.6, if you're not in China, again, it's going to be a very, very minor update. I'm not really expecting any major changes, but once again, if you're on the beta train, you're most likely going to jump to iOS 26 anyway. So these iOS 18 betas will be old news and you will not care about them. And speaking of iOS 26, it's about time to talk about some of the upcoming iOS 26 leaks. So we got a lot of leaks this week, and I'm going to share some of them in this video, but I will have another video coming tomorrow specifically on all the last minute iOS 26 leaks and rumors, because because this can be a 10-minute segment if I do it right here in this video. So I'm just going to tell you about some of the expected features that we saw this week from trusted sources like 9to5Mac and Mark Gurman. And I also wrote about these in my newsletter that went out yesterday morning. So if you're not subscribed to the Apple Day newsletter, check that out down below. But anyways, you can see here that we're expecting some changes to messages. So these messages app is finally going to get some updates. It's going to be more like WhatsApp. So it's expected to get a new automatic translation feature for both incoming and outgoing messages. Also, messages will have an option for creating polls without relying on third-party applications, and these polls could be powered by Apple Intelligence, with Apple suggesting polling categories. And we're also hearing from Mark Gurman that you will be able to set backgrounds for messages, and these will show up on both devices, so it's going to sync from your device to the other person's device. You can have a background, kind of like you can with Instagram DMs, so that'll be pretty interesting, and of course WhatsApp. Now here's what I'm really looking forward to. So the music application will add full screen animated album art to the lock screen. So right now when you play a song, so I'm just going to play this song real quick and I go to my lock screen. If you tap on the album art, it does give you kind of a full screen album art, but this new version in iOS 26 will allegedly be animated and it will cover the whole screen. It won't just be this small square, it will be the entire screen on the lock screen and it will be animated. So that will be pretty cool. We're also hearing that the Apple Notes application will finally add Markdown export, which is a long requested feature that third-party apps have had for years. The Shortcuts application will get Apple Intelligence support, and also CarPlay will receive an updated user interface, and it will also get some new sound recognition features. But as far as Apple Intelligence features go, don't expect much with iOS 26. It's going to be kind of a gap year for Apple Intelligence, which I think a lot of people are going to be they're either going to be happy for that or they're going to be disappointed that Apple didn't release anything after last year's bust. So anyways, we're hearing that, some Apple employees even call WWDC 25 a letdown from an AI standpoint. They're already saying that, but it will be good for developers because Apple Intelligence is coming to third-party applications, as Apple is going to allow developers to integrate its AI features directly. So you're going to have access to Apple's models. We also have an update on macOS 26. You guys know how every year Apple chooses a popular destination or a mountain or whatever the case may be around California. This year, it's allegedly going to be macOS Tahoe, named after Lake Tahoe, of course, which is near California. And I might be looking into this too much, but Lake Tahoe is known for having reflections and kind of like a glassy-like look. So coincidence? I think not. We are definitely getting that glassy redesign. And again, if you want to see all the iOS 26, macOS 26, visionOS 26, all those leaks, I will have a last minute leaks and rumors video coming tomorrow to detail all of those. But let's move on with the leaks and rumors. Let's move on to something else because Snapchat this week did get an Apple Watch application. Yes, that's something that companies don't really do anymore because the development cost just outweighs the money that they make from the Apple Watch app. But you now can have Snapchat on your Apple Watch where you can reply to chats and things like that from your Apple Watch itself without having to use your phone, which is pretty nice. Also, something we've been waiting on for a very long time is finally happening. The Instagram application is finally coming to iPad. So Mark Gurman says, I'm told that employees on the Meta Platforms campus are actively testing Instagram for the iPad and that development work is full steam ahead. I would expect it to be released this year if all goes to plan. We're also hearing about some interesting features coming to the WhatsApp application. So if you're somebody who uses WhatsApp instead of messages, there are going to be some nice new features coming, including an AI chatbot creation feature and also usernames. So I'm excited for usernames because now once this comes out, you will not have to share your phone number with somebody else on WhatsApp. You could just share your username, which seems a lot better for privacy. But as far as the AI chatbot creation, of course, this is still in beta, but there's going to be a new section in the app called AI Studio, which allows you to create an AI assistant. So you can set the AI's role, personality, traits, and more. It's going to be similar to how you create a GPT on ChatGPT. You'll basically be able to do that inside of WhatsApp, which can be pretty useful. And speaking of ChatGPT, we also saw an update to it this week as well. So specifically, if you're on the team membership, it says that ChatGPT users can now use record mode to take notes on meetings, and ChatGPT can also now connect to Google Drive, Dropbox, Box, SharePoint, and OneDrive, and you can ask it for answers about the stored documents. So if you have a question that you want to ask against your Google Doc, you can ask that and it will be able to go into the documents and read that data and give you the answer back. Super useful. And if you are a PlayStation gamer on PS4 or PS5, you can now use Apple Pay to make purchases on the PlayStation Store. So if you want to buy a game or some add-ons, you can now do that with Apple Pay, which is going to be a huge time saver because I would never have the information on my credit card, but now with Apple Pay, it'll be a lot easier. And speaking of gaming, we also saw Apple announce this week 4 new games coming to Apple Arcade. So these include Angry Birds Bounce, Kingdom Rush 5, and more. Now, also this week, we got some interesting yet confusing rumors about the iPhone 17 and 17 Air, and they might not be as good as we were originally expecting. However, we do have some good news before we get to the bad news, because we're hearing that all iPhone 17 models, not just the Pros, are expected to adopt the Meta Lens technology for Face ID. So this Meta Lens is going to lead to smaller Face ID components and potentially a more narrow dynamic island on all models. So this was originally expected to be a Pro and Pro Max exclusive, but now we might get a smaller dynamic island, even if it's a little bit smaller across the board. So fingers crossed for that. But the bad news, aside from the fact that the iPhone 17 is going to keep the A18 chip, while the 17 Air gets the A19 chip, and of course the Pros get the A19 Pro chip, the base model is also going to stick with 8 gigs of RAM, while the Air and the Pro models are going to get 12 gigs of RAM. But that's not it, because we also are now hearing that the iPhone 17 and 17 Air are not going to get ProMotion displays with a variable refresh rate, but they're going to use LTPS panels fixed at 120 Hertz. Now, we've heard time and time again that the iPhone 17 and 17 Air are going to have 120 Hertz displays. However, you got to keep in mind that 120 Hertz and ProMotion are 2 different things. ProMotion is a variable display, like the refresh rate on that display is variable. It can go from 1 Hertz to 120 Hertz, whereas 120 Hertz could be just stuck at 120 Hertz, or you might have a toggle to switch from 60 to 120 Hertz. So that might be a possibility, but we're now hearing that maybe the 17 and the 17 Air, they're both going to be without that ProMotion display yet again. It's going to be only for the Pros, but at least we still have some hope that it could be 120 Hertz. I just feel like when it's a static 120 Hertz, when it's fixed at that rate, it's going to be bad for the battery life, which is why I think that there could be some type of toggle or something like that to switch from 60 to 120, unless Apple has figured out another new type of display that's a little bit below the ProMotion display. Now, we also heard some good news this week about wireless charging on the iPhone 17, because we might see a big upgrade for iPhone 17 wireless charging thanks to the Qi 2.2 standard. So this was found from 91 Mobiles. They found this over on the Taiwan NCC certification website, and this looks like we're going to have new MagSafe chargers that charge up to 50 watts. So right now, the Qi 2 wireless chargers, the MagSafe chargers, can only charge at 15 watts. We're going to go from 15 to 50 watts wireless charging. Now, of course, it's not going to reach the full 50 watts, but still, that's a significant jump for wireless charging. But not just that, we're also hearing it's going to have, improved magnetic alignment natively. It's also going to be more efficient. It's going to be backwards compatible with Qi 2 and older chargers, and also cross-brand compatibility. So other brands will be able to adopt this standard. It's not going to be something proprietary to just Apple MagSafe chargers. But it's good that the iPhone 17 will be able to support those fast wireless charging speeds. So we'll have to wait and see if this actually comes to fruition, but this has me excited for wireless charging, because really, ever since last year, I've been predominantly using wireless charging almost every single time I charge my phone. And then finally, just as tradition, we have another crazy AirTag story, and shout out to this guy over on Instagram for sending this to me. If you guys ever have any crazy AirTag story, any AirTag stories that you come across on the news or on Instagram, anything like that, be sure to DM me over on Instagram. It's just at Brandon Butch over there. I will always read those messages. So thank you for sending this over, because I did have to translate it. So this time, a man in Belgium found himself in a similar situation. He went to grab his bike one evening in Leuven, only to realize it had vanished without a trace. But unlike most people, he was ready for this because it was not his first time that his bike had gone missing from his storage room. So at some point, he smartly hid an AirTag inside of that bike. And now the Find My app showed his bike, and somehow it already made its way to another city by the time he realized it was stolen. And turns out someone had cut right through his heavy-duty lock that he had on the bike, likely in the middle of the day in the center of that city. So instead of going out with friends like they planned that evening, he gathered two buddies and they immediately jumped into action and headed to Brussels. So all three of them were willing to fight and get this bike back. So the Find My app led them right to a closed-off courtyard surrounded by buildings. And local residents actually helped them out because they let them in the courtyard after they told them the situation. And that's when the men spotted the stolen bike in a white van with a blue tarp on the roof. They saw it through the window. And to make it even more obvious, a bunch of bicycle wheels were literally sticking out from under it as well. So they took a photo of the van and they got all the information from Find My and they took that to the police. So he was able to show exactly where his bike was via Find My, and sure enough, the police moved quickly in on the thief. So the police were able to find the man connected to that van, and he was just down the street at a cafe. So he was ordered to open up the van by the police, and when he did, the doors flew open and bikes almost fell out. So inside was not only the man's bike, but a whole collection of stolen stuff. So he had bikes, scooters, a mower, and more. So of course it was obvious, and the police took the thief into custody, and the victim, who had both the Find My proof and the original purchase receipt, was able to prove the bike was his and get it back. And this guy is lucky because apparently the van was already set to leave the country soon. So once again, without the AirTag, none of this would have been possible, and he would have never seen that bike again once that guy left the country. So make sure you put an AirTag on your bike, especially that's one of the most common stories I see here on the channel is people stealing bikes, e-bikes, things like that. So be sure to hide an AirTag in yours if you do have one. Anyways, guys, that's it for this week. I am super pumped for Monday, WWDC 2025, iOS 26 redesign, live stream, all that fun stuff. Make sure you guys do tune in to the live stream on Monday. I am going live a little bit before the event, and of course I will be live a little bit after the event as well, so we can discover all the new features together. So check it out. It's down below. Also be sure you check out the newsletter and the Discord server. All that good stuff is down in the description below, and I will see you guys very soon.